Have you ever looked through the Steam discovery queue? And I mean, actually gave it a fair try. Don't get me wrong, most of the time, it's just filled with whatever's new and popular, or AI gooner slop. But every now and then, it'll recommend you some true gems. Some of my favorite indie experiences have come from games the discovery queue showed me. Crimson Gray, Double Cheeseburger Medium Fries, and Endless Monday, to name a few. And, of course, the visual novel I'll be going over today, It Gets So Lonely Here. Since this video will inevitably spoil its plot, I'd like to take a quick moment to try and convince you to give it a read yourself, since that's always the best way to experience a work. It Gets So Lonely Here is self-described as being a yuri yandere visual novel with a fairy tale theme. Wait a minute. Yandere? Okay, I swear this isn't going to be a theme of my channel, it's just a coincidence. As for those tags, they are accurate. This is no ordinary yuri. This is dark yuri, although it definitely leans much more strongly into the horror of a fairy tale yandere as opposed to being a standard relationship-based dark yuri. Not to imply that there aren't relationship-esque scenes, there are, but yeah, the force of nature that gives this game its yandere tag definitely takes center stage in my opinion. I'm not usually one for content warnings, but just to be upfront, this game does depict some pretty abhorrent ways to die. Nothing is ever shown, but it is always very well described. See, this is my first exposure to the author, Ebihime, and her work, and I must say her writing is insanely high quality. The diction, the vocabulary, it's all immaculate. I had to look up the definition of a word I'd never seen before every 10 text boxes or so. There are so many patterns in the text for the reader to find, foreshadowing and referencing itself and whatnot. Phrases will frequently take on new meanings and elicit new emotions after being repeated throughout the VN a few times. Hence why I feel that reading it yourself would be optimal. I could never point out every example of these. Now, I do have to warn you, it is written in British English! The horror! The horror! But if you can get past that, you'll get an amazing experience. Did I mention it's free? Either way, if you'll think you'll enjoy it based on the tags and my description, go read it yourself. For everyone else, please join me as I retrace my steps through It Gets So Lonely Here. We begin our tale with our protagonist, a nameless girl, sprinting through a path in the woods. It's dark, it's dreary, she doesn't know where she's going, but we're told she's running from something, or more accurately, someone. Whoever she is, our protagonist apparently made a deal with her, a deal she deeply regrets making. Eventually, the girl happens upon a three-pronged fork in the road. A signpost dictates that the paths ahead lead to a shore, a village, and a castle, and we're allowed to choose which path she pursues. In our original playthrough of this, Cysha and I experienced the paths from top to bottom, and I actually recommend doing that. I really like the way information and reveals are presented when you do the routes in that order. So, we select the shore, and the narrator sees the girl off, grimly hinting that she had better know how to swim. The sight of the shore feels, at first, hopeful, mostly due to it not being the forest, but it's cold and utterly deserted, not to mention the foreboding nature of the jagged cliff face. One misstep around it and eventually, she happens upon a shack, and hope is renewed. It's ramshackle, but a hole-filled roof is still a roof, and perhaps within she'll find someone who can help her. Perhaps a kind old fisherman, she muses. Someone protective, like what she imagines a father figure should be like. She knocks on the door, but no answer. A second and third round of knocks are equally fruitless, so with steeled nerves, she just opens the door. Inside, she finds it abandoned and so small that there's hardly enough space for the furniture within. But again, a roof to sleep under is a roof to sleep under, and given her exhaustion, it does not take long for the girl to doze off upon the straw pallet that serves as a bed. At this point, I didn't know what to expect. Would it descend into horror immediately? Would the entity chasing the girl catch up to her? Are we walking straight into a Three Bears situation? None of the above. Instead, we're faced with a different, more immediate source of horror, one's past. While asleep, the girl dreams of her time attending a conservatoire?
Conservatoire.
Oh, I pronounced it correctly. We witness firsthand her poor school experience. She tries to keep her head down, but after taking an unfortunate tumble where she scrapes her knee, she attracts the attention of her peers. A classmate offers her a hand, but when the girl takes it, she is pulled up and then shoved into a nearby fountain. The icy cold water engulfs her, biting at her skin and threatening to drown her. The girl, shaken awake by the combination of the imagined frigid water and her determination to never return to those days, climbs up from the straw. She doesn't know how much time has passed, but it can't have been long since the stars are still out. Wandering to a nearby window, she hears a faint sound, something akin to singing? She feels compelled to investigate, ignoring the potential danger, taunted all along the way by the narrator. She successfully climbs down the cliff face and clambers along the rocky shore until finally happening upon the source of the singing. It's a beautiful woman, or at least that's how she appears from the waist up. Her lower half is that of a sea creature, a detail that makes the girl audibly gasp, loud enough to attract the mermaid's attention. But as awkward of an introduction as this is, the mermaid takes it in stride. She expresses a refined excitement at seeing the girl, not having seen any others recently, leading her to draw the conclusion that humanity humanity might have gone extinct. And as you might expect, if you've seen any mermaid media, the girl is charmed. It's love at first sight, you might say. The girl quickly moves to assuage the mermaid's concerns about the potential eradication of the human race, putting extra emphasis on her own existence, of course.
I have always been fond of you humans. It was rather sobering, sitting here night after night, all on my own. It gets so lonely here.
The mermaid appreciates the gesture. She asks of the girl's familiarity with the region, seeming to have an underlying reason for doing so. The girl tells her that she comes from a faraway land and has not stepped foot in the nearby village, so she has no information to provide about it or its inhabitants. She also, once again, affirms her own existence, desperation on full display. The mermaid appreciates that, but yeah, the girl quickly figures out there's somebody else on her mind. Another human girl. She then goes into immense detail about her history with this human, her many nights spent conversing with her and learning about her life and the world at large. She truly cherished that human, and jealousy wells within our protagonist. The mermaid does muse, though, that she should be glad to have another human visitor, and though she must depart soon, she would like to see the girl again. Though the girl is seething at the thought of being a fallback for the mermaid, her desire to be in the presence of someone so beautiful weighs much more heavily, and so they agree to meet again the following night. Satisfied, the girl stumbles back up the cliff to the shack and falls asleep upon the straw once again. No dream of the past this time, but the narrator reaches out to her. They wonder where the fear the girl felt prior when she was fleeing from her pursuer had gone, and warn her that she might be getting complacent. The girl seems not to think so the narrator shrugs, and then bookends the conversation with a threatening, "You will." The next morning, the girl finds some bits of food in the cupboards to quell her hunger, but she is much more focused on the events of the previous night. To put it simply, she's down bad. Eagerly anticipating her nighttime meeting, she goes on a walk, desperate to find something to do to speed time along. Turns out, the cliffs are much greener than they appeared in the dark of night. A significant portion is actually covered in flowers, which prompts an idea in the girl. Why not pluck a few and make a flower crown for the mermaid? Yes, I had to look up the word the author actually used. That part of the introduction wasn't a lie. After finishing, she returns to the shack and spends the rest of the day trying to stay busy to force time to move quicker, until finally, nighttime rolls around and she can once again hear the mermaid's song. She clambers down the cliff face once more and reunites with the woman that takes up her every thought. The mermaid fills the girl's head with so many honeyed words of praise that the previous concern of being nothing more than a fallback feels as though it was erased, at least initially. The girl presents her gift apprehensively, which the mermaid receives graciously, continuing to praise her. The girl's self-consciousness makes her doubt said praise, but the mermaid is relentless, reassuring her that to not say what one means is not only a human notion, but also a waste of time. The other girl was like that too, apparently. Oh, the girl wasn't the only one who made gifts for her. The other girl also made flower crowns. And bracelets too? That bitch! Wait a minute, do we play as the yandere? The mermaid praises the flower
diadem,
saying that its quality is significantly greater than any of those her previous friend made. Jealousy quelled instantly. Damn, she's good. The duo engage in some small talk until the mermaid dives below the surface to fetch a gift for the girl in return, a seashell, whose beauty she immediately compares to the girl. There's a lot of details put into this exchange regarding the girl's inner turmoil, how she's internally battling between not feeling like she deserves any praise and how rude she might come across as were she to refuse it. Given the few details we've been drip-fed of the girl's past, it's no wonder why she would overthink the situation as much as she does. The mermaid seems to know exactly what to say to counter the girl's overthinking, assuaging concerns when necessary, but also lightly teasing when appropriate. She has this girl wrapped around her finger. We then get a bit of a time skip. We aren't told exactly how long, but we fast forward enough days for the girl to have learned how to fish. Though her days spent foraging for food isn't the focus. It's her nightly meetings with the mermaid, which continue unabated through the time skip, until one particular evening when the mermaid presents an intriguing proposal. She wants to show the girl some of her world beneath the waves. Sure, that sounds good, but one issue, the ocean is terrifying? The mermaid makes a promise, in an attempt to alleviate the girl's fear, that she will be with the girl and will not let go. That doesn't help. Well, it doesn't help me. The girl feels much better about it. After all, the mermaid established earlier that only humans lie, so the girl agrees to it, and I'm left screaming at the screen. The girl takes the mermaid's hand, and the duo dive into the deep. Here we get our first CG and first look at our protagonist, if you don't count the Steam page. This art style is super unique, with differences in shade only existing if defined by strict, hard lines. Very whimsical. I like it a lot. We're off to a great start in the ocean. The art is beautiful, the water is freezing cold, the girl's limbs feel awkwardly useless. Hey, but the fish look gorgeous. Their scales apparently glisten like rainbows. And there's plenty of moonlight to see it all for a while, but the mermaid swims deeper and deeper. The water grows ever colder, its pressure ever heavier. The oxygen in the girl's lungs depletes rapidly, the pace matched only by the fading moonlight. The girl, desperate for relief, gets the attention of the mermaid, but she is completely unbothered, the CG darkening to match her new tone.
Forgive me, dear one, but the moment you consented to sinking beneath the water with me, your fate was sealed. Your lungs will be flooded with water soon enough. Then you will die. It is not a pretty way to go. You needn't worry about your corpse bloating, disfiguring, or being eaten by fish, though. I will take very good care of it. I promise. In death, you will look lovely, almost angelic. Is that not what you always wanted?
The girl can't respond or attempt to correct her in any way. Attempting to speak would be an invitation for water to fill her lungs. The mermaid continues her explanation. She admits that the disappearance of her friend tormented her. That girl could have died in any number of horrible ways, and because of that, the mermaid refuses to let anything like that happen again. So, she has decided to take her new friend back to her citadel, a place where she can never possibly go missing. As the light fades from the girl's eyes, the narrator, between bouts of berating her for her unwise decisions, poses a question. Will you accept this fate of yours and rest in peace, or will you try to fight against it? And we are afforded the opportunity to choose how the girl responds. If we choose to give up, the narrator has some interesting words for the girl. No matter where she runs, even if it is to the bottom of the ocean, the girl cannot escape them. That even if she is forsaken by the world, they never will. Bookending her statement with, "You will never be lonely again." And then we're booted back to the title screen. Before we ponder the narrator's words, let's go back and make the other choice. Let's fight against fate. At this, the narrator praises the girl for once, actually happy to see her show determination. And along with that praise, the girl is given another chance. In the narrator's words, "Your fate is once again in your hands." We then come face to face with the initial signpost choice once again, this time with the shore option removed. Before we depart on our next route, I want to take an aside to discuss perspective. Most stories are written in either first person or third person perspectives, but this one is written in second person. You know, the perspective usually reserved for Goosebumps, Choose Your Own Adventure books, and Reader x Leon S. Kennedy fanfictions. I was initially wary about how this perspective would be handled for two reasons. For one, I have a personal bias against being involved in fictional stories, namely with things like avatars. I actually hate avatar characters. You can give me the blandest, most blank slate avatar, and I would still rather ascribe them a character and personality completely removed from myself than ever put myself in their shoes. This is in contrast to something meta like in One Shot, where you are literally a character in the story. No avatar in between involved whatsoever. That game handles player involvement in such a cool and unique way, and I love it for that. But within a few text boxes of "It gets so lonely here," you quickly realize that you aren't the target of the narrator's speech. They describe the scene and the main character's thoughts, as a narrator would, but they also provide their own snarky commentary directed at their target, the girl. So while it is second person, the narrator themselves almost acts as another character in the story. Hell, it's basically confirmed that they are once you read their speeches after making a choice upon the girl's drowning, and you aren't really involved in this story at all, aside from an Easter egg at the very, very, very end. My second reason for being concerned was because of past experiences. I love If My Heart Had Wings, which is written in first person, but there's a couple of times where the main character opens an inner monologue with, "By the way," and it makes me want to explode. It's like he's talking directly to me, reminding me of my own existence in a story I don't exist in, and instantly killing immersion. So I feared that the narrator speaking in second person would give me that same feeling, but thankfully they don't. As I stated, they're clearly a character involved in the story. It's super well done and completely blew my expectations out of the water. We don't know yet to what extent they may participate, but there's only one thing we can do to potentially get some answers. Press on, and on, and on, and on. Let's go to the village. On our way, the girl imagines what kind of folks she might encounter when she arrives. She fantasizes about a kindly peasant woman, one who would treat her like a daughter. This parallels the previous route where she imagined a father figure in The Fisherman. You might have held out hope that the previously mentioned lack of father left room for there to be a kind mother at least, but no. Apparently neither of her parents acted like, well, parents. The village is quiet. Too quiet. The cottages have noticeable disrepair, and there is nary a light in sight, even in the middle of the night. The girl knocks on doors, desperately seeking companionship, but no dice. Cottage after cottage, each just as empty as the last. Eventually, the girl happens upon a church and its accompanying graveyard, and in that graveyard, she spots someone. Another girl wielding a shovel, digging a grave. After spending a few moments observing her, the protagonist grows brave enough to approach. That girl, upon meeting eyes, gives a warm smile, melting away the protagonist's concerns about their meeting. Okay, from now on, assume if I say the girl, that I'm talking about our protagonist. This wasn't confusing during the mermaid's route, but now that we have two human girls in our story, it's necessary to address this. The different heroines of the three routes get their own titles like the mermaid, or in this case, the gravedigger. Though, note that I am calling her that before the narrator officially prescribes her that title. So, again, if I say the girl, I'm talking about our protagonist. Got it? Cool, let's move on. The girl introduces herself as a traveler, and the gravedigger, with her rough voice and unsophisticated manner of speaking, reveals the reason for the village seeming as abandoned as it is. Apparently, a plague came through and killed every member of the village, save her.
I'm not seeing another human being in a long, long time. It gets so lonely here.
Second title drop aside, it's entirely possible that this is the village the mermaid's friend is from, and if that's the case, then I suppose we now know the reason for her disappearance. Anyway, the gravedigger invites the girl back to her home for a meal, and the girl, eager for not only food but also companionship, happily agrees, though she seems very unimpressed by the gravedigger's home, likening it to a hovel. But food is food, and the girl is so desperate for food, she scarfs down the bowl of soup and bread she's offered ravenously. The girl briefly fears judgment for her actions, but the gravedigger simply smiles at her. She's evidently not like the peers from her past. And speaking of the past, the gravedigger opens up about hers. She comes from a long line of gravediggers, and holds pride in that fact. So much so that this is the point where the narrator begins referring to her as such. The gravedigger's father, who taught her everything she knows, is gone, as is her mother, who died long before. The girl remarks that she can actually relate to that, and we get a lore drop about her past. Though her own parents aren't dead, they might as well be. As soon as the girl was old enough to be sent away to boarding school, she was. And her parents never checked on her a single time? No letters, no visits, no nothing? The gravedigger continues her self-history lesson. The plague swept through her village and killed all denizens within practically no time at all. She even goes into detail about the frankly grotesque symptoms. Clammy skin, fevers, and boils that burst and reeked of death. It took her father, it took everyone. Everyone except the gravedigger herself. And since she was the only one left, she saw fit to bury every single member of the village that had passed. I really like how awkward the girl is depicted during this. The gravedigger's recounting of the past brings her to tears, so the girl tries to console her. At first she raises her arm, but then she realizes she doesn't know what to do with said arm, so just falls back to her side uselessly, forcing her to rely on verbal consolation. The gravedigger appreciates it, but assures her it isn't necessary. After all, she's not alone anymore. The girl will keep her company, right? The girl, feeling she has no other choice after such an animated declaration, nods her head in affirmation. So the gravedigger excitedly goes about cleaning up a room for her to use. The girl, surmising that it's not only likely the room the gravedigger's father succumbed to the plague in, but given the size of the house, also that the room is likely tiny, is not looking forward to this. Sure enough, it's cramped, but at least it contains a bed. The girl muses that given how ramshackle the rest of the home was, she half expected to have to sleep on a straw pallet. Oh, the sheets are clean, so no having to worry about using the sheets that belong to a dead man. The gravedigger hands the girl a nightgown and then leaves her to her sleep. And sleep she does, though much like the previous route, the girl dreams of her past. At some point, the usual bullying by her peers suddenly stopped. Nobody tried to trip her, or pull her hair, or throw things at her. It was great at first, but then she started to realize that nobody was acknowledging her presence at all. This lasted for months, so long that she began to wonder if she was even real, if she was even alive. And then she saw it. Erected underneath a tree near the courtyard where her physical education took place was a grave. Upon that grave was her own name. It's definitely implied to be a form of bullying. She didn't actually die and become a ghost, though it's written so ethereally I wouldn't blame you for thinking that way. But like, wouldn't a prank like this fall apart once a member of the faculty acknowledged her presence? I'm probably overthinking this. Logically, I want to think that not being tripped and not having things thrown at you is better than being tripped and having things thrown at you, though they do say the opposite of love is not hate but indifference. Moving on from today's moment of me having no media literacy, the girl wakes up. She has made breakfast with a smile, and then we're treated to another time skip montage of a few days. The girl helps out around the hovel home by doing some basic chores, while the gravedigger continues to, well, dig graves. The girl finds this kind of strange. Why continue to dig graves that nobody is around to eventually fill? The gravedigger struggles with an answer at first, but supposes it's simply to carry on the tradition. It's in her blood. It's all she knows. Being ever terrible at consolation, the girl has no reaction to this, instead returning home. She sets about making dinner, and later in the night, the gravedigger makes tea to accompany it once she returns from her work. After a brief meal, the girl is feeling especially tired, so she retreats to her room. Upon changing into her nightclothes, the gravedigger knocks on the door. It's only natural she'd be worried about a spell of lethargy after watching her entire village die of sickness. The gravedigger asks the girl if she'd like to have her hair brushed, since it's relaxing and might help if she's feeling under the weather. The girl agrees, since, as the narrator points out, it's probably more for the gravedigger's reassurance than her own. The two bond over their shared lack of a supportive mother figure, but the reminiscing eventually gets to be too much for the gravedigger. She cracks, bemoaning her lost loved ones, distraught over her loneliness. The girl reassures her that she's not alone. They're there together. And sure, that's true, but the gravedigger doesn't feel like she deserves it. Why should she deserve it after she failed to help her father, after she failed to help everyone? And now, another person has finally entered her life. What will she do when she inevitably fails to help that person too? She's absolutely terrified of that outcome. The gravedigger erupts with tears, despite how awkward the girl had been with consolations in the past, and how she wouldn't ordinarily feel brave enough to. She pulls the gravedigger in for a hug. Aside from a brief apology and a subsequent reassurance that one isn't necessary, the two girls sit together in silence and understanding. The girl pulls the bed sheets up and over the two of them, continuing to hold her companion, until she eventually drifts off into a deep sleep. The girl opens her eyes, woken up from her rest, and sees Nothing. Her surroundings are pitch black. She feels the distinct tightness of her usual uniform, meaning someone must have changed her in her sleep. If that isn't bad enough, the bed she was lying upon has been replaced by something as hard as stone. As a matter of fact, no matter where she reaches, she doesn't reach very far, stopped by the same hardness. She doesn't want to believe it, but there's only one conclusion to draw. Given the lack of light and space, there's only one place she could be. Inside a coffin. As she comes to this realization, she begins to hear a rhythmic drumming from above, and it doesn't take long to conclude its source. Dirt is being piled upon her. The girl cries out to the gravedigger, the only possible source of the noise. Surely there's been a mistake. Maybe her lethargy put her into a deep sleep that the gravedigger mistook as death? At least she awoke before the point of no return. Just in time to call out to her barrier, who will retrieve her once she realizes her mistake. But there's been no mistake. This was premeditated. The gravedigger assures her as much. But why? They were becoming such good friends.
I've been digging graves for a long time, see? Well, I was digging all these graves, but I've not had anybody to put them in. Not for ages. It was rather sad. I was thinking I'd never find another person to bury in this godforsaken village, and not after the plague messed everything up, and I was getting desperate. Until you came along, that is. Now that I have somebody I can bury, I'm not gonna let the opportunity pass me by. I'm sorry, but this is just part of my job. It's what my father taught me to do. It's all I know how to do. I buried my mother and I buried my father. I buried all my friends. Now, I'm gonna bury you too.
The girl desperately pleads to be released. After all, she's still alive. Why should she be buried now? And besides, she would never leave her new friend. Her claim doesn't work. The gravedigger counters by reminding the girl that she herself claimed to be a traveler when they first met, and as a traveler, she would surely get sick of the gravedigger's company and leave before long. But by burying her now, she can ensure that it occurs before the girl has the chance to flee. Utterly hopeless, the girl cries, screams, begs, but it all falls on deaf ears. She slams on the coffin as hard as she can, screaming until it hurts, but she doesn't elicit another response, just the continuing sound of dirt piling ever higher. Eventually, the sound stops, and with it, any hope of her barrier having a change of heart. Creeping in alongside the reminder of her own inevitable suffocation is the narrator's voice. They taunt the girl before offering the same question they did during the previous route. Will you accept this fate of yours and rest in peace, or will you try to fight against it? If we choose to give up, the narrator delivers a similar speech as the last time we give up, albeit with a buried alive flair to it. It's a reminder to the girl that she'll never be alone, never be free from the narrator, even buried as deep in the earth as she is. But that's not what we're canonically choosing. So, of course, we fight against fate, and the narrator sends the girl back once again. Another route down, another opportunity for an aside, and I want to dedicate this spot to offering reassurance to the author. See, after you beat the game, you unlock a note from the author where she discusses her inspirations, thoughts on her work, etc. And one of the things she says in this note is that she came up with the ideas for the village and castle routes first, and then the idea for the shore route later, and as a result, feel as though the shore route is the weakest narratively. But now that we've seen two paths, I want to use the Gravedigger's route as evidence that the Mermaid's route fits right in. I must first express just how sick it is that we get to learn what probably happened to the mermaid's friend. It genuinely blew my mind when I first made that connection. And even though I like the way that information is revealed better than if you did the routes in the inverse order, doing them that way is still a neat reveal in and of itself. It's just instead of inferring what happened, you hear about the mermaid's missing friend and then hit her with a collar tug. They feel very connected, and it feels rewarding to notice those connections. Connectedness between routes that reads well is not a guarantee and should be celebrated. There's this essay that I read at least once a year called The Emotion Whose Name You Do Not Know by Ori Koringe, which is actually a review of the most important visual novel to me, Katawa Shoujo. One of the criticisms that the author of that essay brings up is that one of the routes, Lily's, actually suffers from forced route connectedness. Because certain events tied to her best friend and fellow heroine Hanako must occur, Lily ends up losing out on a chapter and a half worth of content to cater to Hanako's canon. So yeah, the Mermaid's route is really good, and I want to celebrate the well-executed connection between it and the Gravedigger's routes. It would be kind of awkward to discuss connectedness between all three routes now though, since we haven't seen the third route yet. It is the best one, in my opinion, and naturally being as well written as it is makes it fit in with the other two just fine. Obviously, I can't go into too much detail yet, so just keep an eye out as we progress through it. As for the possible concern that the Mermaid's route is the weakest narratively, or even the least inspired, I honestly think it's fine. I think each one of the routes has a way that they feel like black sheep. Sure, the Mermaid's route has the least dialogue between her and the girl, but as is also pointed out in the author's note, her existence as a non-human, quote, adds more magic to the story. It's unique. That doesn't make it worse. The Gravedigger is a black sheep because her route feels the most platonic. The girl has a crush on the mermaid, and the third route is quite romantic, but she kind of of seems to look down on the Gravedigger and her lifestyle, as if she could never see her as a love interest. And as for the castle route, again, I can't go into too much detail, but it feels the most removed from the other two and the world as a whole. Not completely removed, just most removed. You'll see what I mean when we actually get into the route. Anyway, moral of the story, I really like this visual novel, and maybe the mermaid route is the weakest, but it still fits right in with the others. They're all good. Good job, author. Let's move on. Collect $200, go to the castle. I thought initially that, given the girl's grudging of the peasantry lifestyle of the Gravedigger, combined with the implied etiquette training that would come with attending a conservatoire, she might fit in nicely with the denizens of a castle. But while the girl does dream of a chance meeting with a fair princess, the narrator is quick to point out that she herself would be considered peasantry in the eyes of royalty, not to mention how filthy her clothes are from her midnight run. Nevertheless, it's the girl's only remaining option, so proceed she must. And she proceeds completely uninterrupted. No guards spot her as she stands before the gates, nor do any catch her when she slips through. The girl contemplates if she's the only human alive, but there's a light on, so someone must be home. Entering into the castle proper, she calls into the foyer, but again, no response. Not from her calls, nor from the slamming of the thick door behind her. So she explores around, finding nothing, until she spots an open door on the second floor. Nervously, she creeps inside, coming face to face with another girl about her age. And much like with the mermaid, the protagonist is instantly smitten. That girl, whom I'll refer to as the princess, even though this is again technically before the narrator christens her with that title, bubbly proclaims the girl to be her new maid. The girl agrees that, although that isn't necessarily why she's come, she isn't opposed to it. Yeah, she folded immediately. Down tremendous. This is where the princess introduces herself properly as such, the daughter of the king and queen. Despite her position, however, her demeanor is much more humble. She forgives the girl for any possible perceived disrespect immediately. She's quite energetic and happy-go-lucky, happily chatting away to the girl. After some musings about the past, she admits that all of her servants have gone missing and only she remains. She surmises that they must have been sent away by her ministers, who are brushed over at this point. The king and queen have apparently been long dead, so they couldn't be responsible either. So I guess in the end, the truth is, who knows? But we might. Playing the routes in the order we did, you can't help but wonder if the plague reached here too. It wouldn't be too far-fetched. If the Gravedigger miraculously survived it, maybe the princess did too. Whatever the cause, one thing's for sure. The princess is here all alone.
You've no idea how much of a relief it is to see you. This castle is so big, and without my servants, it feels so very empty. It gets so lonely here.
The princess's spunky voice really flips the script on this rule of threes, but before we or the girl have any chance to argue, the princess insists that she shows the girl to her room. This begins with a quick tour of the castle's interior, which ends in a pleasant-looking bedroom. The girl describes it as scant and not as fancy as her old dorm, which, like, yeah, I guess it's nothing compared to the princess's bedroom, but man, you should have seen what you were sleeping on in the other routes. Anyway, a room is a room, so the girl quickly and easily falls asleep. Though, like in previous routes, when the girl sleeps, she remembers her past. Here we're treated to more of a montage of bullying rather than one singular event. We learn of her dormmates forcing her to shower last so that she's late to breakfast. Because of it, she's left with the scraps and has a hard time finding seating because nobody wants her to sit next to them. We learn of the girl being treated as a pack mule, being forced against her will to carry bags, and being treated as a maid, being forced against her will to mend fabric, among other chores. And then, on top of that, we learn of a time during sewing class where a classmate stabbed her in the palm with scissors, and, to make matters worse, her professor blamed her as if she had stabbed herself. Damn, the people in this girl's life were comically evil, and still are, actually. She's been murdered twice. The girl awakens from her nightmare to find a maid outfit laid out on her bed. Ready to take her new job seriously, she dons the outfit and makes her way to the princess's room. Mission 1. Wake the princess. Cleared. A rank. Easy peasy. Mission 2. Brush the princess's hair. Cleared. B rank. Only had one lewd thought. Mission 3. Change the princess out of her nightgown and into her favorite dress. Yeah, she struggles with this one. The princess is quite the free spirit. She stands there, stark naked, and not embarrassed in the slightest, happily poking fun at the girl, who is sweating bullets. After successfully dressing her mistress and surviving an onslaught of teasing, the girl faithfully follows the princess on a walk outside the castle. The garden they arrive at, as you might expect of one abandoned by his caretakers, is fairly wilted, but it does have a bed full of roses in full bloom, completely unaffected by the lack of human-provided TLC. I alluded to it earlier, but I'm gonna say it now. This route is the most romance-filled. Every scene where these two are together feels like it fits right in with any other Yuri. The princess, completely enraptured by the beauty of the roses, picks one. She enjoys its aroma and then immediately plays Yoshi's favorite game, ending it on she loves me. The girl asks who she was thinking of when playing the game, and the princess hits her with a "isn't it obvious" type response. You can imagine how the girl reacts to this, and how much she is teased for said reaction. The princess sees fit to pick a second rose, and coerce the girl into playing her own round of the Yoshi game. The girl consents, but when she reaches out to grab the rose, pricks her finger and begins to bleed. The princess, feeling like it was her fault, seeks to make it right. The girl blushes at the thought of receiving a fair princess's handkerchief, but that's not what happens. The princess takes the bleeding finger and gently sticks it in her mouth. This scene is written so sensually? Low-key, I fear putting it on YouTube lest it be mistaken for adult content. But while this scene is extremely romantic and maybe even a little lewd, it's also a reminder of what VN we're reading. If we're playing the odds, this route probably isn't going to end well, and an action like this gives an extremely dreadful sense of foreshadowing. But who knows? Maybe we just picked the two bad routes and we're finally experiencing the good one. Right? Okay, the next thing that happens, let's see. It's a time skip montage describing the days spent with the princess and, oh god, it's happening, isn't it? One rainy night, the girl is about to tuck the princess into bed when she requests her faithful maid stay a little while longer and read a story, since she always has trouble sleeping during a storm. It's a trap, though. A story actually means multiple, and the girl is way too in love to say no to another one. It's a true infinite combo. Now, if she has a hard time saying no to a story, how do you think she'll respond when the princess asks her to sleep in the same bed as her? Well, her reaction is something like this. Yes! I'm just kidding. She's much too shy to be that forward. But the princess convinces her, and trust me, it wasn't hard at all to do so. So the two lie in bed together, and the girl drifts off to sleep, her heart filled by the feeling of her true love's fingers interlaced with her own. And they lived happily ever after. Good ending acquired. The end. Video over. No, of course it isn't over. The girl wakes up and, much like the last route, is not at all where she fell asleep. She is standing completely vertically, restrained against a hard wall. She realizes, based on her surroundings, that she's in a dungeon. And speaking of her surroundings, the room is littered with dead bodies. The art might have you believe they're cartoon skeletons, but the written descriptions are much more grisly. One has their entrails pooling out of their body. One has a smashed-in face with only one eye barely hanging on. One's missing limbs, and another is missing their entire lower half. The girl struggles against her restraints, not wanting to end up like the corpses surrounding her, but to no avail. Eventually, the princess arrives, and she's just as bubbly and chatty as ever. In response to this, the narrator drops a hard-ass line about how the princess's manner of speaking doesn't change, it's just your perception of her that changes. It's easy to think she's developed a supervillain speech pattern when she's admitting to having killed all of her previous servants and is going to kill the girl next, so to have that confirmation of otherwise by the narrator is haunting. But this isn't just about killing. The princess admits that she does appreciate the girl's presence and kindness, but it isn't enough. She can no longer be contented from simply having the girl at her side. She wants the girl to be a part of her. Tensions rise as the girl begins to understand what the princess has in store for her. She is to be devoured. In a desperate plea for her life, she gets into an argument with the princess about the impropriety of cannibalism, eliciting more of the princess's story and ideology out of her. She killed and consumed her maidstaff, because to her, that's what you do with the people you love. The girl hits her with a why, and gets hit back with a why not? Okay, opening argument absolutely destroyed. What's next to the girl? Got any evidence to present? Actually, cannibalism is illegal. Okay, sorry. I shouldn't be making light of this situation, especially because it goes so hard from here on.
That's very funny. But why should I care about the law? I'm a princess. One day, I'll be the queen. I am the law.
But what of the people, her subjects? Surely cannibalism would turn them against her.
What subjects? I'm no fool, you know, no matter how I might act. And I know what happens beyond the castle's walls. I know all about the plague.
God, that line gives me chills. Up to this point, the castle route has felt pretty removed from the others in my opinion, but the princess's knowledge of the plague feels almost meta, like she knew that it might be assumed that the previous maidstaff died of the plague due to information gained from previous routes. Plague aside, the girl has but one desperate question left to ask. Why? Why do this? I mean, she kinda explained it already, but one powerful final speech should drive it home.
Why, you ask? It's because I don't want you to leave me, of course. Everybody leaves sooner or later, whether they have pledged their allegiance to me or not. That is simply the way of the world. People are fickle and inconstant, even to me, a monarch. That is why I decided to eat my servants. I had no choice, you see. It was the only way to ensure that they would never leave me. When you think about it, they should be grateful that I would demean myself so, to consume their flesh and blood. I am a magnanimous ruler, you see, and I treat all my subjects equally. I love every single one of you. And naturally, I love you too. So, I'll bestow upon you the highest honor I can conceive of. I want your body to mix with mine. Then we can stay together forever and ever.
She delivers this, and then begins ravenously tearing into the girl's throat with her teeth. As the girl's body grows limp, the narrator once again asks, will you accept this fate of yours and rest in peace, or will you try to fight against it? Giving up to see the dialogue results in much the same as the previous times we did this. The narrator indulges us in our apparent wish to be eaten alive, and then reassures the girl that even being broken down and mixed into another's body is not enough to be free from them. All the while, the princess chomps away like she's the Chuck E. Cheese ticket muncher. But, yet again, we don't actually give up, elating the narrator so much that she hits us with a salacious euphemism before sending us back. I'm sure you're dying to find out what's going to happen now that we've completed all 3 paths, right? Well, too bad. I have one more tangent to go on before that. Personally, I find the skeletons hanging in the castle dungeon to be a little goofy looking. They can't possibly live up to the gruesome descriptions of the other bodies, but that doesn't necessarily break my immersion. I find that I tend to hold the written words in visual novels to a much higher scrutiny than the accompanying art, unless it's like, you know, egregiously bad. Not to say the art's useless, no. A life-changingly beautiful CG is still exactly that. I just value the written word higher. It's why something like the goofy skeletons don't really affect me, but the phrase, by the way, at the start of an inner monologue is enough to ruin my entire day. Here's another thing I noticed in this VN that's adjacent to this topic. Look at the girl's hair. It's distinctly pink, right? In every CG, it's pink. In this chibi on the Steam page, it's pink. Her hair is pink. Yet the couple mentions of it within the VN describe it as red. It's entirely possible that, were it described as pink, it might break immersion. You might stop and think, wait, was hair dye invented back then? Since this story takes place during the time of royalty and peasantry. Wait, when was hair dye invented? BC! Okay, let me rephrase. It might break immersion to have a character with pink hair that exists before a time where it was common to do so. Although I guess this is meant to be a fairy tale. Why can't you have pink hair in a fairy tale? Regardless, the very existence of this train of thought is immersion breaking, correct or otherwise. So it's described as red, and I don't bat an eye. I brought up Gato Shoujo earlier, and that VN also does this. Every time Hanako's hair is brought up in her own route, it's described as dark, even though in her bio it's canonically purple. But purple is an unnatural hair color, so it might break immersion to have that written, except for one scene where it's compared to amethyst via a metaphor, but it's exactly that, a metaphor. The English language is a powerful enough tool that you could use a metaphor to call anything, and as long as it's written well, it won't break immersion, at least in my opinion. I'm curious though if any of you agree with me on this one. Are art and word equal value to you, or do you prioritize one over the other? As I said, I always value the written word higher, and these are just a couple of things I noticed when looking at this VN with that perspective, but I'm super curious if any of you feel the same way, or if you think I'm completely in the wrong here. Let me know. Now then, let's get back to the narrative. Your fate is once again in your hands. But is it really? I mean, the girl's fate was in her hands 3 times tonight, and each time she was led to a gruesome end. So it's no surprise that when we fade back into the forest, there's only one option waiting for us. This is your final spoiler warning. The story shifts somewhat from here on, and I recommend that if you want to experience it as it was intended in its original format, you stop watching and download and read through it yourself. The girl can no longer go on, crumbling under the mental toil of the night's experiences. The narrator taunts her for her weakness and her inability to change or grow stronger despite all she has gone through. There's the sound of snapping twigs and crunching leaves. Someone is approaching. Actually, no, not approaching. They have always been here. And here we see, for the first time, the girl's pursuer, the narrator, the witch. The witch, here to claim her prize, reminds the girl of her past, that she was the one who brought this upon herself, that she was so desperate to expunge loneliness from her life, to have even a single friend, that she would turn to a book of the occult she found in a library to make it so, that she would sign a contract with a witch. She wanted to be loved, and the monkey's paw curled. And then, selfishly, the girl ran from what she wished for. Luckily for her, the witch is awfully forgiving. After all, as she herself says, she could have cut the girl's hair off, poked her eyes out, or broken her limbs. But being the merciful and benevolent being she is, she simply continued to shower the girl with her love. Love so overflowing it drowned her. Love piled so high it buried her. Love so satiating it swallowed her. Do the witch's references to the 3 deaths turn any gears in your brain? If you haven't connected the dots yet, I'll lay it out for you. There was no mermaid, there was no gravedigger, and there was no princess. Each was just a projection of the witch and her twisted love. It's likely, too, then, that the stories surrounding them were all equally fabricated. The connected storyline of the mermaid's friend, the village, and the plague, none of it was real. None of it mattered. Only one thing was real. Only one thing mattered. The witch's love for her dear one. And she demands that the girl return the favor, that they stay together forever. The witch repeats those words we heard each time as we chose to give up prior, and we are booted back to the title screen. The story of It Gets So Lonely Here coming to a close. After finishing the story, a new button will open up on the title screen. Notes from the author about the project. I love whenever creators do this. Passion always oozes from these. Their anecdotes about their inspirations for the VN and how it came to be are fun. This is where I got the author's note about them feeling like the mermaid's route was the weakest. They also bring up their choice of second person here, which I discussed earlier. They ask if, since the narrator is actually a character in the story, does that mean that the story is actually written in first person? Though it's written as a quip about semantics, that's honestly probably the reason I loved it as much as I did, even with my bias. They also state that the second person perspective was partially inspired by Slay the Princess, which I definitely picked up on. Another, in theory, second person story that has a narrator that makes you question if it's even second person at all. That game is fantastic, by the way. The Thorn route made me cry, and the Dragon route is one of the most insanely creative things I've ever experienced. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. The artist for the characters and CGs is also credited here, and looking at the gallery, yep, they did a truly amazing job. Although, wait, we finished the story, but there's still one image missing. That's weird. What's this at the end of the author's note? Maybe we should go through the story again? We might find something that'll surprise us. Okay, I'll bite. Let's see. Yep, running through a forest. Yep, this, huh? Oh. This is different. The narrator is now much more actively antagonistic, directly calling out the girl for trying to escape her love for a second time. But given how merciful she is, she's willing to play along one more time. In her own words, she seeks to crush any remaining spark of resolve in the girl. The girl makes it to the signpost yet again, berated all the while. Here, the witch dismisses the previous "your fate is in your hands" line by stating it false. After all, the girl's fate belongs to the witch. The witch begrudges having to repeat the same exact story as last time, seeing it as a waste of time. She didn't even prepare any dialogue for revisits to the mermaid, gravedigger, or princess. In fact, there shouldn't have even been any revisits. Dying 3 times should have been plenty to break the girl's spirit. But she lets the girl continue anyway, confident that she will submit once more before long. As the witch has stated, we are free to use the visual novel's skip function upon picking a route, as none of the dialogue has been changed. At least, not until we have to make a choice. Giving up on the mermaid's route will have the witch nodding along with a "that makes sense" attitude. The girl may have been strong enough to fight against any given fate once, but twice is too much to bear. The witch reaffirms that the girl will never be lonely again, and then we're sent back to the title screen. This is pretty much true no matter which route you give up on in this run through, so I won't be mentioning it again. Fighting against fate on the mermaid's route will have the witch commend the girl for her tenacity, while still reaffirming futility. Additionally, the original Fate in Hands dialogue is changed significantly, where the witch denounces the notion, assuring the girl that she belongs to the witch, and that she cannot wait to find out how long the girl can hold out before breaking entirely. After the gravekeeper buries the girl alive, fighting against fate slightly changes the witch's attitude. Now, instead of simple reaffirmations, the witch feels a show of force necessary, with threats of beating her love into her, and lines like, "I only wanted what is best for you, you know?" and "hurting you hurts me too." The Fate in Hands dialogue also becomes more forceful here, with the witch encouraging the girl to continue her struggle despite its futility. I don't mean to break the immersion or make light of the situation or anything, but she's kind of talking like the final boss of a JRPG that we're killing with the power of friendship, where there's like a new text box every couple thousand damage or so. It's actually kind of hype. Fighting against the fate brought upon by the princess seems to have the witch flabbergasted, exhibiting signs of bargaining and denial. Still, she tries to drive the final nail in the coffin with this variant of the Fate in Hands dialogue, where she piles on even more reaffirmations of futility. And perhaps she's right. You fought well with the girl, but against an all-powerful witch that has you ensnared in her curse, what can you do but give up? The witch returns to her place at her dear one's side, ready to console her, ready to embrace her, ready to love her. And of course, the girl says nothing in protest, because she knows it to be true. Her silence is an obvious indication of submission, so the witch muses about their future together.
No.
Wait, she said no? She can talk? Did the witch hear that correctly? Did I read that correctly?
I said no. I am not your dear one. I never wanted this. I just wished for a friend. I didn't want to be lonely, but you ensnared me. You tricked me!
But the girl's protests are unfounded. She knew the risks when she signed that contract. It's a good thing the witch is so forgiving. Look, she's immediately ready to extend a hand, calmly saying, "Now if you will come with me, my dear."
I am not your dear.
The witch is astonished by the girl's outburst. Like a mother with a child throwing a tantrum, she moves to scold her, saying, "I must insist that you cease this childish outburst at once, or else—"
Or else what? Will you cut off my tongue? Will you pluck out my eyes? You already stole my name, but it's coming back to me. Medea. You're called Medea, and I'm called Rosette. You're just like the others. I'm not afraid of you anymore. You took everything from me, and now I'm taking it back.
The witch Medea, now powerless with Rosette's name returned, pleads for her not to go. "Do you really mean to abandon me?" she asks.
That was a general idea.
Having the situation completely turned against her now, Medea desperately cries, "What am I supposed to do?"
You? You can rot for all I care.
And then Rosette turns and walks away, leaving Medea to stew in the night's events. She calls and calls to the girl that summoned her, but nothing works. Rosette has escaped, returned to her world, and Medea has been abandoned. She remarks that perhaps another lonely girl will summon her someday, but until that day comes, she is resigned to lying among the leaves and lamenting, thinking to herself, "It gets so lonely here." With Rosette freed, we have our complete gallery and an updated note from the author. Funnily enough, she opens up by commenting that it's entirely possible the first note was missed if you figured out to replay the game without thinking to check the notes, which is actually what happened to Cysha and I in our first playthrough. She muses that she only thought to add a New Game Plus feature while coding, and that the original plan was to let the post-3 deaths ending be the true ending, with Rosette still ensnared by Medea. As I stated in my previous video, I am a big baby that can't handle unhappy endings, so I for one am glad this ending was added, especially with how frankly cool it was. I absolutely love how Rosette's rebellion is written and got really into it on our first read-through, like visibly hype into it. She goes into detail about her thoughts on the new ending and what the characters' names are references to. Again, I love reading stuff like this. But then she states that the format of Rosette's text boxes is based on Fate Grand Order? No, the horror! The horror! Joking aside, yeah, it was sick. She has a few more messages about inspirations and then leaves us with one last paragraph that tells us that something different will happen if we check up on Medea now, but also leaves us with a warning that our actions have consequences. If you find yourself curious and check up on Medea, you'll find her still lamenting the story's events before she notices you and asks you a simple question. Will you sign a contract with her and relive the events of the night, or will you refuse and be on your way? Refuse her and she'll send you along your way back to the title screen. Accept her deal and she'll wipe your save so you can experience the girl's story all over again. Wait, the girl? Didn't she have a name? Hey, thanks for watching. This is the kind of story I could never do 100% justice in video form, so I highly recommend you read through it yourself to pick up on all the little nuances and bits of dialogue that I couldn't include in this video, and support the author, Ebihime. I genuinely mean it when I say her writing style is phenomenal. Either way, if you enjoyed my retelling of this VN that I've been thinking about for the past few months, please leave a like and consider subscribing, as I'll be discussing more of these indie games that capture my heart in the future. Oh, and also a comment if you think anything I said during the intermission segments was unfounded or stupid. Or agreeable, I guess, but unfounded is the more likely option. But either way, I hope you have a good morning, evening, afternoon, or night, and I'll see y'all later.